Yeah, thank you very much. And I wish I was here to talk to you about technology because I'd like to do that more than talk about finance and things like that. I'm a technologist at heart. That being said, Silicon Catalyst is an organization that was set up exactly 10 years ago to help early stage companies and take emerging technologies to market and to commercialize those, take technology breakthroughs and build enterprises. And so I look forward to talking to you today about that process and especially about funding the future of sensors. This is very appropriate today. And Roger, when we talked about this months and months ago, we had no idea that a lot of changes would be happening in the whole grant situation, which is somewhat unfortunate. But at the same time, I don't want to dwell on that today. I want to talk about how do we go forward, because there's still a lot of funding out there, and talk a little bit more about what Silicon Catalyst has done to help early stage companies. So it's my pleasure. Thank you, Roger, for inviting me to speak today. Do I push the green button? There we go. All right. So just real briefly about Silicon Catalyst, and I've already touched base on it. We're the only incubator that's focused on deep tech hardware, semiconductors, sensors, MEMS, materials, and photonics to some degree, and now quantum, which is coming up very rapidly. All these things we see are captured in microfabrication, mostly on silicon, but other materials as well. And so that's been the focus of our ecosystem. We've built a fantastically large ecosystem. We have more than 400 advisors, a couple of those in this room, a couple of strategic partners that help to underwrite that. Thank you, Drew and DuPont, which is one of our larger companies that underwrites our efforts. We started out with an incubator in California to incubate early stage companies. We've then added and expanded that to bring in some financial backing behind that. Silicon Catalyst Angels, you can see in the green boxes, those are the financial ones. Silicon Catalyst Angels, I'm on the board of that. That's a small group of 50 or 60 individuals that are industry professionals that are investing their own money in these early stage companies. And then the Silicon Catalyst Venture Fund, which now is a limited partner fund. Companies come to us and ask to invest their money into these early stage companies. And we've expanded to the UK, supported by the UK government, and to the EU, headquartered in Malta. And I'm actually in the process of bringing up an entity in Japan, and one of my colleagues also in Australia this year. So we're going to be largely getting all the way around the world here. We used to have an incubator in China. We divested that because of some of the concerns associated with that. But that we did incubate 30 companies, 34 companies in China as well. So just a little bit about the funding of sensors. And, primarily I've focused my attention on sensors, silicon-based sensors. There's all kinds of sensors made out of ceramic and, all kinds of things. And it's a very large market, but our focus is really on the sensor market that's associated with silicon or microfabricated types of devices. So you can see this gigantic bell curve that happened in 2019, 2020, and 2021. This was driven by LiDAR almost exclusively. VCs got real excited about LiDAR and the potential application of LiDAR in automotive, and thinking this was going to be something that was going to just explode, right? They didn't realize that, LiDAR is a hard technology to start with, and then putting it in automotive, that's another 10-year kind of process. And so then all the VCs started, wow, gosh, we didn't realize it was going to we weren't going to see any of this product until 2030 or beyond. And so then they stopped spending there. But on average, VCs are spending About $5 billion, not 5 billion, about $1 billion in funding on an annual basis. If we kind of look back over the last 20 years on sensor companies. So $1 billion is actually a lot. There's a lot to be done in the sensor industry. It pales in comparison to the semiconductor industry, but it's a much smaller market. I'm here to tell you that there's still a great deal of interest amongst VCs that are in the sensor industry, and there's a lot of money for good ideas. So just a couple more statistics that are just kind of interesting. And I wanted to share these with you because there are people in this audience that are doing fundamental research and creating very interesting technologies that can be commercialized. And I understand when you're in academia, a lot of times it's a bit of a mystery as to, okay, I've been able to get some grants, put $1 million or $2 million behind this. But if I want to build a product company, I need $50 million or I need $100 million. How in the world would I get that done? That's what Silicon Catalyst tries to help do with early stage companies. Help you with a process. We all come from a background of doing deep tech startups. I've done 7. By the way, it's not recommended to do that many. A couple would be great, but I've had a couple of very, very good exits. Not been the CEO of any of them. I was the founder on 4, or on the founding team of 4. So it's a very exciting time right now because of some of the changes in the marketplace, and it's a great time to bring commercializable products to market and take them into the enterprise that they could be. So there is a fallout, out of 5,000 companies that we're tracking along with Traxon. If you look down that, as they go down through the process, a lot of them do fall out. If you look at this from founding to Series C, it's about a 10-to-1 drop-off rate. That's actually pretty good. It's much better than the semiconductor industry, to be honest with you. The semiconductor industry is like, 30-to-1. And so it's quite a substantial drop-off. The funding amount, if you look, this is over a 10-year period. Early stage funding is the leading area, about $5 billion over 10 years invested in that area. And again, this is for that roughly 5,000 companies that we're tracking. 10-year funding by country, not a surprise. The United States is the largest VC driven organization in the world. A lot of other countries have kind of caught the vision. It's part of the reason that we're pushing Silicon Catalyst out into a wide number of different regions of the world, is because we see startups growing in a lot of different areas. And Japan, for instance, has never had much of a startup culture there, but there's a lot of desire and interest. They just haven't had an infrastructure yet. So we're really excited about getting things going in Japan. And I want to touch base a little bit on recent funding, just to give you some examples. I'm not going to go through all these. Several of these companies came through our process. One of them right here in this building, the company Zepser, was really not founded in 2015. The original work was started in 2015. We've brought in a little more than $1 million in funding to the company. They're just starting to sample their first product. We think the world of what they're doing, and we're really excited about that. But so we work with mostly early stage companies, but a lot of these companies now are growing up to be real companies. One of the companies in our portfolio is now worth $1.4 billion. So that pretty exciting. 10 years ago, they started in 2016 as 2 people just coming out of university, and now they're the company is worth well over $1 billion and probably on its way to many billions. So we have examples of unicorn sensor companies that have grown out of fledgling ideas, and now are, have raised VC in the levels of hundreds of millions of dollars. Roger was involved in one of these companies, Echo at the top, not XO, Echo. They've raised over $350 million, and their current valuation is $645 million. So, and this is just, fundamental MEMS technology company that really has struck on a very good idea. A couple of other ultrasens, a company I've been involved with, Luminar and Ouster. Ouster, I literally sat with the founder and two other co-founders at a folding table in a garage, and that wasn't that long ago. It was in 2015, 2016, and now they're a public company valued at $617 million. So like I said, it's an exciting time. You shouldn't fear the opportunity to take some of these technology companies forward. Notable sensor company acquisitions, again, not going to go through all these, but a good number of these are companies. I think I was speaking to somebody during the break about Next Input. It's a company that met with several times at a very early stage. They were acquired for $173 million by Qorvo. These companies are companies that are getting acquired by some of the biggest companies out there. I didn't even list, well, I think Apple's got one on there, PrimeSense. Apple's acquired a lot of sensor companies. So, that is a little bit of the evidence of the interest in the investment community in sensor technologies. And, why do they see that? Well, there's strong growth in every segment of semiconductor and sensors. I think, Drew, you talked about kind of 8% CAGR. That's very attractive to investors. Many new applications are popping up. There are a lot of new materials that are helping to enable the concept of new metals and other things like that being brought into microtechnologies is opening up the door for a lot of new sensing technologies. But more than anything, I hate to sound like a broken record because everybody's talked about it today, AI is driving a whole wave of new sensor growth. All the investors see it. They're looking for the best ideas out there to put money behind. And so, and that's not a flash in the pan. I mean, there's things like LiDAR that popped up very rapidly, and everybody got very excited about. Hundreds of millions of dollars were thrown, billions of dollars really thrown at that, and it became a big bubble and popped. And I mean, it's still going along, but the VC interest is not as high. AI is pervasive. It's so widespread, and it's going to drive sensor technology so extensively that I see really the next 10 years AI being the dominant driver of a lot of the sensor growth. And so this is a fantastic opportunity as you're doing your research work, as you're looking at productizing different sensing technologies. Understand that the AI piece behind that is what's going to really resonate with investors. So common opinion is that sensing is still at a very early adoption phase. Global electrification and other things like that are kind of drive for the next couple of decades. New materials, manufacturing processes are advancing. Very interested in a number of the papers or posters that were presented are on flexible electronics. Great area, a lot of interest in the investor community in that area. So like to see that. It's very encouraging. Medical, bio, agriculture, we've talked about those today already. Those are going to be strong growth areas like in the immediate future, the rest of this decade. So funding early stage sensor and MEMS companies. As you start to think about, is my technology commercializable? Is my technology something that will resonate with investors? I want to leave you with a few thoughts. It's a very complex topic, and it involves a lot of additional discussion. But some of the things that at Silicon Catalyst that we do as a practice is try and work with early stage companies, even before we bring them into our portfolio, is to establish collaboration between the entrepreneur and potential investors, and see if we can kind of create a shared vision for what can be done with the technology. As you speak with investors, there's actually a little bit of a different perspective. As an entrepreneur or as a researcher, you want to build something, build a company around your vision, right? And around what you've been working on, what you're passionate about. Investors like that. They like that passion. But fundamentally, they want to build a company around a profitable ROI. They want to see a return on the investment that they've brought to the table. And so there's a little bit of a skew perspective as to what they're going to do, what the two organizations want to do. However, that can be aligned because you can share a common goal. It's going to take an enormous amount of funding to realize the vision that you're trying to cast. And developing an understanding of how is the market going to perceive this is one of the biggest challenges that we see early stage companies struggle with. The reality is it's a fairly easy process to identify and resonate with investors. Identify a very good problem, in the marketplace that you're identify a very good solution to the problem. Those are the two keys. The third one is who's going to buy it? How am I going to actually generate revenue? This is where we see the biggest drop off in especially organizations coming out of academia. They haven't spent enough time to really understand what's the financial return on this. And it's great technology. It's really, we think doctors are gonna love this and everything, but at the end of the day, there has to be a business return to create an investment in it. And so we do really try and coach our companies on this. I-Core, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, we love companies that have come through I-Core because they've already wrung out a lot of that. Steve Blank, who was kind of the founder of I-Core, is a very big supporter of Silicon Catalyst. He speaks at a lot of our events, and we love his methodology. So, investors, from an investor perspective, early stage companies are inherently risky. So most investors know that at least 9 out of 10 of the investments that they make is just money that's going to get thrown away. So, and you're banking on that 10th one paying back all the investments and a great deal more. And so that's the algorithm that we're working with in an organization like Silicon Catalyst on our VC side. We're trying to understand at a very, very early stage which technologies have the best potential to succeed. And so our diligence process is quite thorough. It's quite complex. We use a screening process. And most of the companies that come through that screening process, whether they get selected or not, come out much better companies because they've already been asked a lot of the hard questions and they've had to pitch the company 5 times in the process. So MEMS and sensor analysis is quite complex from an investor standpoint. Technology, manufacturing, competition, new markets, the diligence team has to be you have to have very deep understanding of all aspects, especially when you invest very early stage, and which is where we invest. Here are kind of the investment stages. Silicon Catalyst investment window is right at the seed level. We like to invest as early as possible. We have one investor that says we don't invest in seed, we invest in the dirt, because they would like to go really early. But most investors really want to invest in this right in between here, because the valuation of the company, they can still buy in at a reasonable level and capture right at the growth stage. This is typically after Series A, or it has Series A and Series B. And that, to get to Series A, you really have to have a demonstrable device. You have to understand your market and probably have some traction in your market. And it's very critical as you look at this to understand those stages, because the investors that are, kind of going to invest and you're going to build your syndicate around, are going to be, their profile or their thesis for investment is going to be based on where they like to invest. And so kind of these categories of investors, this is kind of the order that you go through when you start putting together a financial, plan to go forward with it and to commercialize the technology. Friends and family is often, the initial money that comes into the company. Your family may not have any money. I know if I had gone at an early stage and asked my dad, he would be like, no way, and so probably most of your families are going to be the same. But you'd be surprised. Coming out of university, a lot of times there are friends that are very interested in what you're doing and can come alongside the company with, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, and get some shares in the company. Angels and angel groups, these are very important for early stage companies. I'm part of an angel organization. We've funded 55 different companies in the last 7 years, so been pretty active in early stage funding, and identifying those groups that can understand your technology, that can invest based on a strong understanding at the fundamental level is really critical. And Silicon Catalyst tries to help align our companies with angels and angel groups that are interested in funding. High net worth individuals and family offices, these are also very substantial in the start of an early stage company. Very often, high net worth individuals, doctors that come from an industry that can really understand the medical advance or the therapeutic advance or something like that, can be very good investors. They can usually write decent checks because they're fairly wealthy and have a personal interest. But high net worth individuals come from all different areas. They are in some cases movie stars, other philanthropists. The tech philanthropist obviously is an obvious area, and a lot of those are very interested in investing and creating a bit of a legacy. The mistake that we see most early stage companies doing is going and trying to chase VC funds and corporate VC with an early stage technology. The reality is that as interested in as those groups may be to hear your story, they don't ever invest in early stage companies. They always wait until there's some level of proof that the technology is worth investing in. And the reason for that is most of them have bylaws in their with their limited partners who are their investors that say, this is the area that we want you to invest in. And 98% of them say, we don't want you to invest early. We want you to invest in growth companies. And so the portfolio is built around companies that are much safer bets because they're looking for a strong financial return. So we're really trying to teach early stage companies to go after the money and the funding for the company where we think that there can be success, so it's time appropriate. And warm introductions, and incubators, advisors, brokers, all these can be very helpful in putting together that syndicate of of investors that will kind of start you on the proper direction and properly fund the development that's ahead of you in the commercialization process. So the other thing, I just kind of wanted to touch base on the two top areas, that investor syndicate and then the investor deck. This is the presentation deck that you are taking to work with investors to get money out of them, to be as straightforward as possible. So the investor presentation should be great and not long. Investors see thousands of presentations in a year, literally thousands. And so they don't want to wade through a lot of deep technical information. They want to hear very specifically, what's the problem? How's it being solved today? How is your solution different? What's your business model? How are you going to get paid for solving that problem? And so, our recommendation is a 12-page template. Sequoia Capital, one of the biggest VC groups in the world, has a model template that you can download and follow that, and your experience with investors will be a great deal better. Extensive practice is also absolutely critical. Vast majority of early stage companies go to investor meetings thinking that they're going to be very friendly, they're going to be, very interested in what they're doing. The reality, and they go in stammering, not that smooth, not really understanding the expectations, and not answering questions well. And so our strong advice is you need to be convincing. That takes a lot of work, running test presentations and getting through that process so that you've got it nailed is absolutely critical. We at Silicon Catalyst, we really do encourage a lot of practice with people that will be critical and that will not just say, "Oh, that's great," and not. You need strong advice to get a good presentation together. That was kind of a little bit of the glimpse that I wanted to give about what the Silicon Catalyst process is, and I wanted to do that to kind of help you realize that this is not something that's that mysterious. It's something that hundreds and hundreds of companies go through every year. If you're interested in actually commercializing a technology, or if you're at a stage where you're looking forward and would feel like an entrepreneur opportunity is of interest, I would encourage you to talk to an incubator like Silicon Catalyst. There are many of them out there. Talk to several of them and try and get some feedback as to what you're embarking on is potentially viable for commercialization. And there are a lot of organizations like Silicon Catalyst with individuals that have been through this process a lot and would love to talk to you about it. I wanted to just talk about 3 companies in a bit of a case study. Perfect. These are companies that Silicon Catalyst has had in our portfolio. They're all sensor companies. I've worked with all of them in the last 5 years, and all of them are at different stages today, but they're all doing really well. So OWL Autonomous Imaging is doing a thermal sensor, basically a very complex bolometer. It will work in automotive and drone kinds of applications and other mission critical type of applications to supplement either CMOS image devices or LiDAR that are doing forward-looking automotive visualization. OWL, because it's a thermal imager, it's effective in fog and snow and light flashes and things like that the other sensors are tend to have trouble with. So the team came together. Their expertise was mostly in the analog side. We help them find a partner to do the sensing side, the bolometer. They partnered with Teledyne to do that. They're chasing a very large TAM, $40 billion TAM with automotive. And their piece of that, they believe, is about $6.5 billion. They've already achieved some initial proof of concept revenue. They've gotten a number of large engagements. And now they're in the kind of final stage of productizing that technology. They've had to raise $35 million, and they're about to raise 20 more. So kind of roughly to get this, initial product to market is going to be $55 to $60 million. They had, we helped them raise money through, we invested in them directly and then brought in other groups like Global Foundries and a couple of other large investors, including AAA, believe it or not, has made it, no, not AAA, Allstate has made an investment in them, from the insurance side. So one example, Exocarix, this is a biochip company that's doing exosome sensing in microfluidics type device. Again, this company had a conceptual idea. Exosomes are kind of the new DNA sequencing. They want to use exosomes to identify biomarkers that are not accessible through DNA. This is an exploding area of research, and we believe very commercially viable. Very interesting company, and we talked earlier today about this company embarked on doing exosome scanning, but when they started talking to the customers, they started to realize that just the sample prep was the main problem out there in the market today, and so they kind of pivoted a little bit, used the exact same technology for just sample prep. And now, they've got investors kind of standing in line to fund them in their Series A. So they only needed to raise about $14 million so far. They're through 2 Series Cs, and they're about to get their Series A with a valuation of about $100 million. So a more recent example of a sensor company that has gone through the process and doing quite well. I mentioned before, Zepser Technologies, right here in this building, a couple floors up. Matteo Rinaldi and his lab started developing this zero power sensing switch. And this is an infrared sensor, pretty straightforward device, bimorph MEMS device. When we saw it, we immediately liked what they were doing. This is a very good fit for a lot of different event-based sensing applications. It's a sensor that is often coupled with other sensors so that everything can be shut down until somebody walks up and is in the proximity range. It senses the heat and turns the whole system on. So it's a great way to save batteries. They've got great traction. They're right in the middle of the development. We funded them with about $1.4 million and they've brought in about $6 million in grants. We're currently working with them extensively to get through the development process. We'll start sampling the product later this year. And it's a pretty exciting little technology. So, a couple of summary comments. The current sensor market opportunity is quite strong. There's a great opportunity out there, and is driven by AI and some of the other things that we've been talking about. There are investors who have significant funds available for sensing applications. A great story, something that resonates well with investors, where they believe that they can put money in and get a very nice return. Those types of companies are being well funded today. And successfully navigating the field of investors really requires planning, a lot of practice, and a lot of persistence. And so, if embarking on that challenge with your early stage technology is something you'd like to do, Silicon Catalyst would love to talk to you. If it's not a good fit for us, we can make some other recommendations to other incubators or other resources that you might tap into. And don't rule out grants yet either. I do think that the whole grant market is going to be bumpy this year. I think it's going to start to smooth out again in the coming year. At least that's the indication that we're getting. So with that, thank you very much.